Hello, everyone. Before we dive in, be sure to drop your thoughts, feelings, and lessons in the comments below. Like the video and subscribe so you never miss stories like this. Let's get into it. Tom Larkin ran a small photo studio on Main Street in an early 1990s Massachusetts mill town. The mills were quiet, but weddings still happened. His front windows showed smiling couples in good light. His back room smelled of fixer and pennies, the enlarger fan humming like a steady thought. His private regret was simple and sharp. He had ignored a ringing phone. His wife, Mara, was driving his last rolls to the mini-lab. A drunk blew a red light on Mill Street. People told him it wasn't his fault, but at night he still heard that ring cut through the walls, and sometimes a second sound, soft and hollow, like ribbon knots tapping wood on the Harlow-covered bridge. Everyone loved the Harlow Bridge, a red-covered span over the Brindle River. The local custom said newlyweds should return at midnight and tie a ribbon to the center beam. Your color, you're not. Thousands of weather-faded strips clacked when the breeze came. Tom photographed the bridge because couples asked and avoided it the rest of the time. The first time the second bride appeared, he didn't realize it. In April '92, at a church wedding heavy with the clean, hospital-bright smell of lilies, he shot the ceremony in a roll of black and white for himself. Later, under the loupe, a pale shape in the background looked like harmless glare. On Tuesday, the paper reported a bartender at the night's hall had collapsed and died in the doorway. Donations were requested for bridge restoration. That night, Tom felt a sudden cold on his neck in the darkroom. The fan kept humming, but somewhere he thought he heard faint ribbon clacks. In June, there was no denying it. At a backyard wedding, the second bride appeared in 3 wide shots, the height of a woman, in dress and veil, but never resolving like a person, under a maple near the electric meter. Then, edging the dance floor, turned slightly away from the living. The next morning, the caterer's daughter died in her sleep from an unknown condition. At dawn, a limb snapped off that maple and crushed the meter box. Tom brought extra prints to Agnes at the Historical Society, who had taught him a process film when he was 14 and looked at photographs like she could hear them breathe. Agnes studied the images. "Did the family get these?" she asked. He said no. "And she's only in yours?" He nodded. She was gentle when she said, "You're not married." He answered, "I was." She asked if he remembered why ribbons were tied on Harlow. He knew the postcard story, a drowned bride in the 1920s. Agnes offered the older rule. Moving water is a border. Spirits struggle to cross. A knot binds vows to the safe side, so the river can't wash them away. Agnes added, almost to herself, that the thing in Tom's photos felt older than the bridge, or older than what the bridge tried to be. He left with the chill, following him to his car, the imagined clack of knots in his ear. Over the next weeks, he learned the hauntings rules by watching where the second bride stood and what the paper printed later. She could mark the future site of a death, a threshold, a top step, a meter box. She could pull cold air into a sealed room. She could bring the smell of lilies into places where lilies didn't belong. Once or twice, something small seemed nudged to make a composition align. She could not speak or write. She could not point in any way that would convince anyone else. And she could not cross the Brindle River on her own, not even over the Harlow Bridge. It felt like she needed carrying. He tried to treat her like a warning. At an August reception, she stood beside an open ladder. Tom put the ladder away. The next afternoon, a boy fell from high school bleachers and broke his neck. Weeks earlier, she had stood at the gym doors in one of Tom's frames. A letter to the editor about ladders got answered by a letter about permanent bleachers. Nothing moved but paper. If she wanted harm, why show him the spot? If she wanted to help, why choose a wedding photographer? The only logic he could hold was this. She wanted binding. To be seen. To be part of what lasted. In September, he shot a couple on Harlow. The river breathed cold through the planks. Ribbons clicked like quiet teeth. Underneath the wood and water rose the smell of lilies. He knew before he developed that she would be there. In the tray that night, the second bride surfaced patiently at the center beam, veiled head angled toward the left rail where the planks were bad, as if looking straight at him through the lens of a rule he hadn't yet named. He made a mistake and called the bride. He brought the album to her house, but kept the extra prints sealed. She and her family thanked him for the beautiful work. Later, a disposable camera snapshot from the same day showed an empty red bridge behind them. One person's photographs are not the world. 2 days after, a school field trip crossed Harlow. A girl dropped through a rotten plank, sliced her shin, grabbed the rail, and was pulled up by an aide. The paper ran popsicle smiles. Tom vomited in the alley behind his studio. He returned to Agnes. "If I tie a ribbon with someone's name, does it help?" he asked. Agnes said it binds something, maybe to the bridge instead of the river. Maybe it makes the river jealous. He wrote Ellen on a white ribbon and tied it to the center beam at midnight. He cried, unobserved, and felt foolish and human. 2 days later, a car swerved to miss a raccoon and hit a pole. The driver who died was named Thomas. The truth hardened. Tying a name didn't prevent a death, it moved it. Names on the beam were less likely to appear in the obits that week. Others died in ones and twos the way people always do. The haunting's motive was hidden but consistent. Not saving, not killing, binding. Collecting vows and memory. There was one ribbon he would not tie. He wrote Mara twice on scrap and never transcribed it. He told himself it would be dangerous. The truer reason was that the photographs were the last doorway to the life he could still visit. The harvest fair arrived, the bridge closed for the parade. The PDA asked Tom to photograph the pumpkin way off. On 2 rolls, the second bride stood in the same place in every frame, just south of the center beam near the Civil War plaque, turned toward the hill where the marching band would appear and the children would gather 3 across in paper hats. That Friday night, he parked with headlights on the first planks and walked to the center beam. The river's sound was a lone note along his tongue. The air went from cool to cutting. He put both palms to the wood and asked aloud, "What do you want me to do?" The temperature dropped like a hand pressing to his neck. Lilies swelled over river silt. The ribbons chattered and then listened. A missing piece slid into place. The spirit could ride only on what carried it. Film, vows, names. She needed him to move. He made a rule and decided to keep it. To move something across a border, the carrier must give up what he's holding. If he wanted to bind the river for a time, he had to trade the one thing still feeding the haunting, his photographs. He drove back to the studio and pulled down the box labeled Larkin 1987 to 1991, his years with Mara on film. He filled a second box with Harlow wedding negatives. He tied both boxes with kitchen string and set them on the passenger seat like sleeping children. Back at the bridge, he wrote Mara on a white ribbon and tied a neat, perfect knot on the first try. Pain flared and held. He slid the sleeves of negatives through the gap between beam and plank. They arced, thought about flying, then were taken by the dark water. The lily smell turned syrup thick. The cold stabbed his teeth. The ribbons hammered together like rain. He fed the second box to the river. Wrinkled smiles, quick glances, 3 fathers unsure what to do with their hands at 3 church doors, until the clacking softened and the air eased. The cost arrived as silence. He could no longer picture Mara's mouth when she smiled, only the color and length of her hair. Their first kiss at Rossini's Pizza became a neon reflection on a windshield instead of a face. He pressed his forehead to the beam where her ribbon lay and felt ice between wood and skin. He left before it could look noble. The parade crossed safely the next day. The band marched. Children in paper hats ran ahead. The paper ran a pie contest winner's grin. None of Tom's PDA prints held a second bride. He did not aim at the center beam. Life continued and felt emptied. A Legion Hall wedding produced clean frames with no haunting. At the bakery, a neighbor mentioned new disposable cameras you could take underwater. Tom joked and then didn't. In December, a woman brought a VHS tape and asked if he could print a frame. He rewound on the studio TV to find the timestamp. In the hospital room, under a heat lamp, the newborn lay like a small, bright fact. As the camera panned toward the door, a white shape flickered. A person's height, trailing edge, no face, then jittered away as the VCR fought the moment. He froze the frame and leaned into the glass. The shape didn't match a reflection. It stood beside the threshold where people walked in. When the father entered a second later, he missed it. The woman got her funny Christmas card. Babies get cold. Hospitals keep rooms hot. Tom tied 3 more names that winter and avoided the obits. The second bride stayed gone from his prints. His style shifted toward hands about to touch, shoes about to step, rings about to slide. Strangers said he seemed more relaxed. In March, he paused at the drugstore window. A cardboard standee advertised underwater disposables. A boy in blue goggles grinning, hand reaching toward the camera. A scrap of blue ribbon was tied to the display and tapped the glass whenever the door swung. Tick, tick, like small knots on a windy bridge. In the boy's goggle lens, a bright white flare sat at the corner like the edge of a veil, easy to dismiss as glare, easier not to. The air by the window was cold. A thin sweetness slipped out when the door opened. Lilies, sharp as ink. The clerk asked if he needed help. He said no. What he needed wasn't on a shelf. That night, the enlarger hummed its one long note. The trays rocked under his hands. In the corner of a print, a small bright edge appeared. Maybe nothing, maybe memory, changing shape. He hung the print on the line and listened. Under the fan's steady whir, he heard a faint clatter, the sound of ribbon knots moved by a wind that started before him and would go on after. He kept working. When he could carry something, he carried it. When he couldn't, he tied a knot, said a name aloud, and let the cold air brush his cheek as the lilies faded into fixer.